let's not just give a high level, hey, go see how AI can support the business, or how could we use AI for our marketing or whatever. Go see how we can use AI to help us with this. Go take a pass at that and let me know what you find. Do say, I would like you to spend 4 or 5 hours researching how other marketing companies have been using AI. I would encourage business owners to do the same. Find where you are bringing the value and then highlight that to your client base. And you need to be setting those expectations at every checkpoint through the process. Build as you go. As you identify a need and a problem, like sit down and address it. And that's suddenly the challenge that you're going to work on for that week, month, quarter, whatever, and then get that figured out and then move on to the next one.
Hello and welcome to Marketing Speak. I'm your host, Stephan Spencer. It's my pleasure to have Melissa Morris with us. Melissa is the founder of Agency Authority and the creator of the TOP, T-O-P-P-P framework, a proven system for scaling without chaos. With over 7 years of experience transforming agency operations from the inside out, Melissa helps agency owners reclaim their time, boost capacity, and unlock new revenue. Melissa, it's so great to have you on the show.
Thank you so much for having me on. I can't wait to dig into this conversation we have planned.
Yeah, so first of all, I'd love to hear how AI is changing the conversation, changing how you work, how the agencies that you work with work to maybe increase efficiency, or maybe they have to downsize or somehow pivot because of this new AI-driven future we're heading into.
Yeah, a lot of the agency owners I work with are definitely in an experimental phase still and trying to see what's going to work well for them, how they can best use it. I know a lot of agencies out there are implementing experiments themselves and trying to see how can we use this for productivity, how can we use this to increase ROI. And one of the ways we as a team have been using it, as you mentioned, I have the TOP framework, T-O-P-P-P. One of those is processes. And we've been relying a lot on AI to just increase the speed with which we can create things like standard operating procedures and other processes. And we found that to be particularly helpful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what would be an example of a use case, let's say ChatGPT, in developing an SOP or improving an existing SOP?
So we do use ChatGPT. That's the one that we use most often. And the way we've gone about it is, I think what's important, and what everybody's more and more realizing is what ChatGPT or any AI platform spits out is really only as good as what we're putting into it. So when I tell my agency owners, if you're going to put in to ChatGPT or any AI platform a broken workflow that's filled with inefficiencies, gaps, redundancies, well, you've just now have a quickly documented a broken workflow, right? The fact that it's now somehow documented and has pretty bullet points and fancy emojis doesn't suddenly mean that your business and your team is a lot more efficient and effective. So what we've been doing is we always have conversations with our agencies. And so when we're working and looking through a workflow, and so just to anchor that a little bit, maybe we're going to talk about client onboarding. How are we improving retention? How are we doing a better job of setting client expectations? Well, let's talk about client onboarding. So this is an organic conversation that I'm guiding, we're talking through, I'm keeping an eye out for, as I mentioned, where are we seeing gaps? Where are the team feeling pain points? Where is the business owner keep getting pulled in? Okay, now let's talk through all that and let's start to map out something that feels clear, more streamlined. At that point, what I can do is I can take that transcript and I can drop it in to ChatGPT. And then I'm telling it, here's what I want you to pull out. Here's how I want this to look. Here's how I want you to format that. And it's spitting it out. So whereas before I was having, someone on my team was having to go through and listen to these conversations and extract and format and get this stuff together, it's able to do it, in 60 seconds. And so we can move through iterations and get things rolled out to team much faster than we had in the past.
Yeah. ChatGPT is changing how we do business. I just listened to an episode of My First Million podcast. Great show. I really like that one. And the founder of HubSpot was being interviewed on there, and I don't actually think it was um, the guest that was sharing. It was one of the hosts, but he was sharing that before he goes into a meeting, he actually now gets the LLM to brainstorm with him and strategize and prepare talking points before he goes into like a brainstorming meeting with his team. And you'd think, well, isn't that the point of a brainstorming meeting, is to brainstorm with your team? But all this upfront work with ChatGPT or whatever your LLM of choice is will markedly improve the output of that meeting. And it's just like you don't want to go into a meeting without an agenda. At least, Jeff Bezos doesn't. He walks right out of the meeting if there is no agenda. Not having done the prep work using ChatGPT as your conversation partner before you go into that meeting, I just thought that was a brilliant insight. So, yeah. Anyways, I don't want to make this all about AI. So let's talk about accountability and how to increase the accountability of the agency, the employees in the agency, the client, and the overall workability of that whole system.
Yeah, so the framework we've mentioned here, TOPPP, that T stands for team. And this is a really important piece for laying the groundwork for a business that's really going to be scalable. If you're really going to get to $1 million, beyond $1 million, and really be serving in that CEO role, you need to get yourself out of client delivery. And the way to do that is through a team, assuming you are a service provider, an agency or a business that offers services to clients. And that can be really tricky. And it starts with hearing, I'm having a hard time delegating. The team isn't accountable. I still have to go back and check in things. I'm getting pulled back in when I shouldn't be getting pulled back in. And these are all red flags to me that there is a breakdown in the delegation process. And the way I like to think about that delegation process is, for many, we think of delegating as, let me hand you a task and you're going to go get that task done. But I want business owners to be thinking about delegation as, I want to hand you a responsibility and you're going to make sure that responsibility gets taken care of. So for a super simple example, there's a big difference between saying, hi, Susie Q, I need you to invoice client X, Y, and Z on Thursday. Got it. They're going to go and do that, versus saying, okay, Susie, you are responsible for making sure these clients get invoiced on the last Thursday of every month, following up if payments aren't getting made, making sure there aren't any chargebacks, updating our bookkeeper, right? You can see there's a big difference. In one, I have just delegated a task, which still requires me, the person who delegated it, to make sure it's getting followed through with, things are getting done in the way I want them done, and I'm checking back. The alternative is, now I've delegated a responsibility. So now this individual can take ownership because I have equipped them with what they need to make sure that this gets across the finish line, and, using additional SOPs and checklists and things to make sure it's getting done in the correct way. But now I'm really able to offload a responsibility versus a random task.
Okay. So let's say that I want somebody on my team to be more proactive when it comes to AI usage. So in this case, I'm not delegating a task. I'm not saying I want you to watch this training from OpenAI about prompt engineering. I don't want to direct them to specific YouTube videos and have them take notes and do the exercises or whatever. That's micromanaging. I want them to have the initiative to want to learn new platforms as they appear, new techniques, new prompt craft, and just come to me with the things that they discover and not have to constantly be following up with them. So in that particular scenario, how do we get that happening?
Yeah, and that one does feel a little more ambiguous, right? I was just coaching an agency owner through this just a couple weeks ago, because this is the type of thing that we want to delegate, but then we show up at every team meeting and it's, oh, I didn't really work on that. Oh, I'm not really sure what's going on there. And it feels very muddled. So my recommendation there is, let's not just give a high level, hey, go see how AI can support the business, or how could we use AI for our marketing or whatever. Let's get really clear. First, let's think of, is there a problem we're trying to solve? Yes or no? If there is, okay, cool, let's move forward with that. If there's not, we're just experimenting, we're learning. Here are some things that I would recommend a business owner do. So first, do not say, go see how we can use AI to help us with this. Go take a pass at that and let me know what you find. Do say, I would like you to spend 4 or 5 hours researching how other marketing companies have been using AI. I'd be really curious to see how they're using it to support their clients, streamline billing, and who has been getting any ROI from it. I would like you to find very specific data points, and I want you to capture all of this in a Google Doc. And then we're going to meet next Friday and we're going to review it together. And then I can follow up with more steps. So again, I didn't just pass off a weird, confusing task. I was very clear about what the expectation was without having to say, go look at this website, go watch this training, right? Go do this thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I think actually clients have an expectation that you are being proactive as an agency. When I say you, I mean just collectively as an industry, we are being expected to increase efficiency and productivity and be more effective using AI, and then they should be charged less, or for the same money, they should be getting more output than they got, let's say, 6 months ago, more outcomes. And I'm curious what your take is on that, because there's a lot of human effort and labor involved, and margins can get eroded, and conversely, if the client doesn't feel like things are moving faster and faster, like the AI advances are in terms of the output from the agency, they might move on to the next shiny object agency, the next one in a string of agencies they might try out till they find somebody who's proactive enough for them.
Yeah, I think that's where the agency needs to do a good job of teaching their account managers on how to manage and set expectations for their clients. Because that's when things are going to really run away with you, is when you're not being clear about expectations and what can be expected. And so I think that means that you need to look closely at your own services and understand where you are saving time, what can be done faster, what simply still does take extra time. So I know for us at Agency Authority, we can hear someone say like, oh, well, I'll have Chat GPT write an SOP. Well, as I already said, well, it can spit something out, or if you put in something that's broken and inefficient to begin with, great. Now you just have something really inefficient documented. So there still requires a strategic component, and eye there that needs to be worked on before we can get something quality out. And so I would encourage business owners to do the same. Find where you are bringing the value and then highlight that to your client base. And you need to be setting those expectations at every checkpoint through the process. Don't let this be don't let them come to you first, I guess is what I'm getting at, is we want to be proactive with these conversations versus reactive, because once we get reactive, it starts to look like we're being defensive. We feel caught off guard, versus when we're coming at it very proactive. It feels more intentional, and our clients better see the value and see us as an authority.
Yeah, one thing I've done proactively for our clients and to our clients is we've developed this whole checklist and set of guidelines around AI usage for writing content, and whether it's a blog post or some sort of pillar piece of content or whatever it is, product copy. If we're using AI to write it, then we might interject hallucinations inadvertently into the copy, or other kinds of factual inaccuracies or other issues. And some clients are just dead set on not having AI used at all, and some are totally wanting us to use it so that it reduces the cost and increases the output for the same cost. So we have a whole kind of set of guidelines, and we have a questionnaire that goes to the client saying, tell us what out of these options you feel comfortable with us using AI for, what you want us using AI for. Brainstorming, headlines, first drafts, correcting grammar and spelling errors and whatever else, other kind of light edits at the end. Tick the boxes. And then our team, our writing team, knows what that client's, what the guardrails are with that particular client. And I don't know if other agencies are doing that, but it just occurred to me, this was, I don't know, well over a year ago, that this needed to happen because most people are not disclosing the amount of AI usage in the creation of content anymore. And so, I'm just wanting to put this out up front, and it's very well received. I think it's a very proactive thing to do. I think it's a great example of how to be proactive in this AI era with a client. So I'm just curious, is that something that you've heard other agencies doing, or is that kind of unusual?
No, I have heard other agencies doing it. And I'm glad you brought that up because, on the one hand, we could have clients feeling like we'll just use AI and make it go faster and faster and faster, right? Get more done with less money. But then we could have, on the other hand, clients feeling a bit like we're cheating or we're not going to offer us quality of work and we're going to lean too heavily on something like AI to do the work that we should be doing. And that is actually going to give them a diluted output. So I think one is recognizing where you fall in this and then being really open and transparent, like you said, with clients and letting them know how you're going to use AI, how you're not going to use AI. I think that's, just really valuable, especially when we're talking about things like any sort of content creation, or anything in that sense. I think it's even more important, as you were speaking to.
Yeah. Yeah. Another thing that I know is an issue that you see with your clients and is just a kind of endemic in the agency world is scope creep and the erosion of profit because you feel so pressured to say yes to all these client requests, and it's not on the roadmap, it's not on the statement of work, and they expect it anyways without any reduction of other kinds of activities. And so then that erodes your profit margins. So, what are the solutions to that scenario?
I think that comes back to really solid onboarding, client onboarding. I think when you're in a conversation with a prospective client, they're in a different mindset when they're still quote unquote shopping around. They may be having a call with you, they may be reviewing a couple of proposals. And so I think they know what they want, they know what they're looking for, but there's also a lot of details that aren't really getting cleared up for them in this moment. And so when they make a selection, that's the point in time that we do want to really revisit those details. So I always recommend during onboarding, depending on the scope and depth of the project, the complexity of it, either there is a welcome email that revisits, here are the key bullet points, here's what we're going to go over, or even potentially a kickoff call with the client where we're just stating out loud, here are our objectives, and this is what we're looking to accomplish. Does that still sound right? Okay, cool. And what that does is when we are very clear about that in that moment, and we aren't making an assumption that they read that little line item somewhere in the contract, or they remember from the sales call we had 5 weeks ago that we don't do X graphics, but we will do these graphics. Getting that back front and center again usually starts to eliminate a lot of the scope creep that I typically see. The other big thing that will really serve your agency and business well to reducing scope creep is making sure that your team members have really clear deliverables as well. So sometimes we're really being clear to the client, but where we're doing missteps is back with our team members, and our workflows are a little messy, our processes are a little unclear, and they have direction as a deliverable is provide updates to X, Y, and Z. Well, I could spend an hour doing updates. I could spend 5 hours doing updates. So making sure they have a lot more context about how much time is allocated to these deliverables and what they really mean is also going to go a long way, because sometimes it's not your clients stepping out of scope, it's your team members.
Right. Are you a proponent of providing like a time breakdown each month of this is how much it took to produce whatever the audit was, or a strategy document or whatever? Is that something that you should kind of keep close to the chest, or convey that to the client?
I think the client doesn't need to know it took me X number of hours to do X, Y, and Z. I think the client needs to know this is your deliverable and this is when I'm going to get it to you and this is how much it costs. Your team, on the other hand, should have better visibility of you're going to put together a marketing brief. Well, how much time do I spend on a marketing brief? Do I spend 10 hours or do I spend 100 hours on a marketing brief? Because there could be a huge difference. And it might even vary based on the package that was purchased, the particular project or client. But you need to give them a line of sight on that, even if it's arranged. But I think, in my opinion, it's less important that the client knows that, because then I do think you're opening the door for saying, well, why is it going to take 15 hours? Can't you put it in ChatGPT and cut that in half?
Right. Yeah. And what about open book management with regards to the team and letting them know things like profitability and other kind of hard costs and overhead and so forth? Is that something that you espouse or recommend, or is that pretty dangerous?
I think this is a situation where we're thinking about context and a high level point of view versus let's get down in the weeds and give all team members a bunch of details. Now, you may have a COO who's tightly looped in on profitability, or a CFO. Obviously, these type of individuals are getting down in the nitty gritty of profitability and details. But I think team wide, but what we can be offering them is insight that says, we are routinely going over the anticipated hours for this type of work. Let's, as a team, talk about why that might be happening. Here's what I'm seeing. Can you offer insight? Do we have training gaps? Is the market changing and we need to adjust? Have costs just really gone up and we need to take a look at that? But I think just opening their eyes to, hey guys, this is taking a lot longer than expected. Let's have a conversation about maybe why that is where value comes out, versus saying, I budgeted 40 hours and you guys spent 62. That feels less important in that context. And then, to your point, we're not opening the door for people to panic or feel like they're quote unquote getting in trouble or now pointing fingers. And then, of course, we certainly don't want to show up, as the business owner with doom and gloom of like, oh, our last 3 projects, we had razor thin profit margins, right? We don't need to scare people or get them worried about their job, but we do need to address issues within our scope of work and what's going on within the business so that we can course correct them.
Yeah. I would imagine that there's a place for ChatGPT or whatever LLM to help with identifying those issues of profitability misses, and also finding potential solutions and what those options are. Like you just rattled off some great ideas in there in a hypothetical conversation with your team. You could probably get a lot of that from ChatGPT like that.
Yeah, I think you can. Again, you just want to be careful, because in a situation where I'm working with the team, the old adage, like there's, 3 sides to every story: his, hers, and the truth, right? So I think sometimes if you're going into that with a silo, and especially if you're the business owner, or maybe you're a little more removed from the client delivery, to just input your observations and ask for recommendations back out, I think is valuable and serves a place. But I think getting the boots on the ground and getting their input and their insights and what they're seeing. And then now what we're going to do is let's take all of those conversations and all of that thought, and then we can put that in chat GPT or your platform of choice and say, synthesize this for me, pull out where we're seeing trends, tell me how this is matching up, what other ideas and ways can we work to improve this. But I do think it's important to have the people actually involved with the work getting their insight as well.
Yeah. One of my favorite kind of tricks, kind of prompt tricks, is to ask ChatGPT in part of a conversation, like, what are my blind spots? What am I not seeing? And you'll get some incredible insights from that. I'm curious if you have any ninja tricks like that as well.
I do the same. I don't phrase it in that way, but I always say, what am I missing? What would you add? What's missing from this? And I intentionally ask it, poke some holes in this and tell me what haven't I thought of or what I should be thinking of. So that question gets phrased a little bit differently depending on what I'm working on. But that's always when I've gotten something to a point where I feel like I like it and I want to use it. That's one of my last questions I ask is what am I missing?
Yeah. So when you're working with an agency, right? Let's say you're pitching an agency. What are you pitching them? Is it a retainer-based engagement? Is it a project? Are you coming in to solve a particular type of problem like profitability or morale or attrition of staff or clients or what's tell me how your process works for getting a prospect to want to say yes.
Yeah, so we actually have two ways in which we work with businesses and agency owners. Some are project and problem focused, as you said. Client retention is really down. How do we improve this? Okay, well, let's look at these different checkpoints. And this would be a time bound project where we're going to come in and we're going to fix something very specific that needs to be addressed. We also work with growing multi six figure agency owners in an ongoing way in a bit of a fractional COO role. So this often is touching on many different parts of their process. And that's where that top framework comes in. We're going to look at their team. We're going to look at their offers. We're going to look at their pipeline, which I consider your previous, current, and future clients. We're going to look at their processes. And then that final P is profit. Like, are we profitable? Where can we have opportunities to improve profitability? And that's where some capacity planning and that sort of work comes into play.
Yeah, could we dive into one of those P's and give some examples of things that would improve our listener or viewers, um, kind of whether they're an agency or not, what would help them to get better and be more future proof for, these interesting times we're entering into.
Yeah, I like to focus a lot on offers, which often surprises people because a lot of the work we do is very operations heavy. So we already are thinking of tools and processes and documentation in that aspect. But I've got that O in there for offers because that is a foundational piece. If you are not clear on what your offers are, the value they bring, how you're going to communicate with your client, and how your team is going to execute on it, the rest is a fool's errand. There's no sense in trying to create an SOP for a service offering that changes every single time you sell it. So offers is where I really recommend people start to take a hard look at what they're doing. And that's getting really clear on where can we work towards standardizing and the gold standard of a productized service offering. And I know that can start to turn people away and make them feel uncomfortable. Well, I don't want to be like I'm just selling a widget. And I don't think it has to look that way. I work with a lot of clients, and what their productized service offering starts to look like is more like module service offerings, right? Like we as an agency know we can support and help businesses with these 8 different modules. But how I piece and put those together and which of those modules I sell to a client can shift and change, which allows for flexibility and allows for a business owner to create what feels like very custom offers to their clients without lacking now in standards and the efficiency gains that come from having things that are standardized.
Can you share an example of a client you overhauled in the offer area?
Yeah, I actually have a really great example. We did a LinkedIn Live earlier in the summer. So if anybody wants to go and check that out, we talk in even more detail about what that looked like. But towards the end of last year, I was working with a woman who supported nonprofits in fundraising. And her top tier offer was fairly expensive. It was fairly hands on. And we were working through thinking of it in this modular way. And how can we build these pieces? And then where can we work to streamline? Well, we all know when January of 2025 came, there was massive upheaval in the nonprofit world. And so suddenly this premium service offering that she had been working the last couple months and we'd been working to standardize, just wasn't going to work anymore. But what we did is that work allowed us to now break apart the modules and say, okay, instead of having this package encompass this full 8 suite modules, we're going to break it into phases and we're going to just have these couple, and we're going to streamline this and have just these couple. And so we spent about a month reworking that, pulling pieces apart, moving the puzzle pieces around to create a new offer. And within a week of putting it out there, she sold 3.
Cool. Yeah, it reminds me of years ago, I used to only offer a full, like a comprehensive SEO audit, but that's like 3 audits in one, essentially. It's a technical audit, it's a content audit, and a link audit. And yeah, I decided I should offer those as separate audits as well. And then if I provide the bundle as a lesser price, then that feels like they're getting a deal, even though I didn't lower the price of my full comprehensive audit. I charged more for the individual, a la carte pieces of it. So that was pretty cool innovation. So I kind of what you're describing reminded me of that.
Yeah, and that's exactly it. So then now, and you may have potentially lost sales when someone came on and thought, well, I don't need the comprehensive package, but I really want that piece of it. So you still have these really key pieces that are standardized, and there's SOPs and there's lots of good templates and such in place. But then when we stack them on top of each other, we can get a really customized and comprehensive package for clients based on their specific needs.
Yeah. So how do you come up with the price? The typical agency world, you have an engagement monthly retainer. Is that the right way to do it, or is there a better way? And what would that better way be if there is? Because I know for my agency, we're charging a retainer, and occasionally we'll take on one-off projects, but it's a pain. It's not something I'm really that keen on. I don't want somebody to come and then turn around and leave as soon as the project is finished. I want a long-term relationship. I have clients, one client, for example, what is my IP address.com. They've been around ongoing as a client since 2017. And that's the kind of client that I want, obviously. That's what any agency would want. But, we also delivered massive value. When he came to us, it was 2 million unique visits a month, and we're at 13 million now. And we're holding steady without a loss in traffic, while a lot of folks are getting decimated with AI overviews and 0-click searches. He's not seeing that downtrend in clicks that a lot of folks are seeing. So anyways, just curious to hear what you have to say about that.
Yeah, so those type of results are amazing for sure. What was the question? Sorry, when you started.
Yeah, so it's around the pricing model and getting a long-term client, that's a long-term partnership and not really transactional, but delivering the best model without having
Yes. Yes. So I think whenever possible, moving into that retainer style offer is key because, like you said, it creates a lot of predictability for yourself and for your client, and it creates the opportunity to continue to serve a client for a very, very long time. Now, with that being said, though, retainers can really backfire. And when they backfire is when the pricing is not set on data points. I am a big fan of time tracking, and I know everyone shudders when I mention this, but you can't have well-informed packages and pricing if you don't have anything to look to or pull from. And you have to look back at your data. You have to look back at time tracking. You have to look at your expenses, and that will guide you toward a price point. And then this is where I hear my agency owner say, but my clients will never pay that, Melissa. Okay, then you need to change the scope of the project or you need to change the client. And I know that might sound harsh, but this idea that you're going to deliver $10,000 worth of work and you're just going to charge your client $5,000 because that's all they're going to pay, you're never going to have a profitable business, and you are going to continue to struggle to improve profitability and get yourself moving in the right direction. So you need to align. You either need to look at your service offerings and see, where can I tighten scope? Where can I create efficiencies? Maybe I can lean on AI somewhere. Where can I automate something? Are there pieces I can strip out? You need to take a hard look at that and see, where can I get the cost down? Or you need to recognize that maybe your business has outgrown the previous ideal client that you had, and you need to set your eyes on a different set of ideal clients. But the point there is, your pricing has to reflect true expense, work, and time in, if you're going to have good profit margins and have room to grow.
Yeah. So what's a profit margin that is reasonable or typical when you've worked with a number of agencies? So what are you seeing?
So that's a tougher one to answer, because that can be a big spread. That depends a lot on the size of the team, the type of overhead a business has. So that, I don't even think I could give a useful range, because that's going to vary a lot, particularly based on size of business and expenses that businesses have.
Hmm. But let's kind of get a range. Like, are we talking about um, 20% margins to 60% or 80% margins, or like what are you seeing? Like really rough ballpark.
Yeah, I mean, really, really rough ballpark. I think for bigger businesses, 15 to 20% is a good profit margin to be aiming towards. Now, a business that's much smaller and doesn't have as much team, that should that should be a lot higher, particularly if the business owner is still down in the weeds with client work. That should be higher. So I would say, yeah, especially in the multi six figure range, at least 15 or 20%, potentially a lot more.
Okay, so what are some of the biggest mistakes that you're seeing in the on the client side in terms of working with agencies? What are the things that are costing relationships and burned bridges and misfires with the final outcome that everybody wanted for whatever the engagement was?
Yeah, I know what will always impact client experience is poor communication. So I'm definitely a big fan of, that saying, even no update is still an update. You really want to create a good communication rhythm with your clients. Sometimes I'm meeting with business owners and I'm asking, even with retainer clients, how often are you meeting with your retainer clients? Well, the work we do really doesn't mean we have to meet. So if we've got something to talk about, I'll shoot them an email, or they know, or I'll hear this too. They know they can always reach out to me if they need me. And I do want to put out there, I'm not a big fan of wasting everybody's time, right? I don't think we need to have some standing weekly meeting for everybody to look at each other. With that being said, even if you have a business that doesn't require tons of input from your client, even if things are feeling really status quo, I recommend at least a monthly check-in with them. Let's get some FaceTime, particularly in this virtual world, because it is really easy for you to just grow farther and farther and farther and farther apart. And where, those first couple of months, it's like, oh, yeah, we don't need you. We're good. Then a few more months go by. Oh, no, we're okay. And then the next thing you know, they're thinking, I'm paying this person all this money, and I don't remember the last time I heard from them or the last time I talked to them. And they're looking at their own profitability and thinking, oh, we got to cut expenses. Where can we go? We haven't even talked to them in 6 months. What are they doing for us? Right? Suddenly, what felt like a really solid relationship dilutes very quickly when, like you had mentioned too, a shiny object pops up. Oh, can't AI just do that for you? Or someone mentions, oh, I get that same service for way less. All of a sudden, you know what I mean? And it's hard to go back. So I think continuing the client relationship through some FaceTime is really, really important. And then in the in between, can we shoot them a random email? Can we do a random check in? So I was working with a company, they secure podcast interviews for their clients. And there is a lull of time when they first start working somebody where they've got the pitches out and they're waiting on follow ups, they're waiting on feedback, right? Like there's this kind of lull that's just, natural to the way they work. And we've built in an opportunity where that's a moment that they check in with the client and they give them an update, even if it just says, we just want you to know we've got a bunch of outstanding pitches for you. We're working hard on follow ups. We're expecting to get some of those yeses in any day now. We're going to check back with you when we do. That feels a lot better than when the client has to reach out to you and says, my pitches, is anybody going to get me on a podcast? Right? It just feels a lot better when, again, and this comes back, we talked about this a little bit before. Are we being proactive with our conversations or are we being reactive?
Right. Now, what if the client is not really cooperative? What if the client is so busy? I've had clients like this where they ghost you, they disappear for weeks at a time. You keep needing responses from them for things going live or things, getting completed, and they're nowhere to be found. And so it's like you can pester them, but it actually doesn't work. That's not a good client, obviously, and I've fired clients like that. But uh, is there another way besides firing the client when they're just too busy to give you any FaceTime or even respond, like with a text?
That's a great question. And we've definitely seen that happen. And I think to your point, there's a moment where you have to ask yourself, is this a good client? And if their inability to show up is going to truly impact the work that you can deliver and the quality that you can deliver, it may be a moment where you have to say, this is just no longer in alignment. With that being said, we don't want to run around and fire every client who doesn't answer our email or, is too busy for a phone call or a Zoom meeting. So a couple of things I like to do, I recommend business owners have something built into their contract that protects them a bit during a moment of ghosting. Sometimes this could look like, so I have an example. I was working with a branding and website company, and what would happen is they would have a slot for this company to get their website built within 2 months, right? Like their client, they've allocated this time, and inevitably the copy would be a mess. They weren't approving things. They were too busy to get on a call and walk through the sitemap. And then the website that was supposed to launch September 1st isn't even halfway done by September 1st. But they've accounted for that in their capacity. They've got another website coming on to work on. This one was supposed to be done. And so what we built into the contract was a clause that said, if you are not meeting these benchmarks, then your project goes on hold. And when you are ready, you let us know. We will work you back into our workflow. And then there is a fee associated with getting you worked back into the workflow. So, okay, you had a busy season, stuff got away from you, whatever, that's fine. But then now we're not expected to continue to work on your website when now we have two more that are coming on because yours was supposed to be done. So work into your contract, work into your scope, areas where you can protect yourself a little bit for those instances. And then ultimately, I'll share something. The VP of the agency I worked at years and years and years ago when I was still working in agencies, she would always tell me, she'd say, Melissa, you can't care more than the client. And it's true, right? You can only ask them so many times. You can only get their approval, beg for their approval. If they don't care, then okay, but make sure your contract protects you when they don't care.
Yeah. What are some other contract protections that are not that common, or maybe kind of gaps in people's knowledge or coverage?
That's a good question. So other ones that clauses and such you want to be including, particularly if we're thinking in that marketing sphere, is who owns files? How long are you obligated to retain files? It's actually the same agency that I'm thinking of. They, not all the time, but it seemed like at least once a year would have a client return from 2 or 3 years prior and say, hey, do you still have that, flyer you designed 2 years ago? We need that artwork so we can get more printed. And it's like, I should not be expected to hold on to that artwork or that file. So I think any clause in there about digital files, data, that sort of thing how long you're expected to hold on to it. Can they come back and ask for it later? Is there a fee associated with that? That's something I think is important and can often get missed.
Mm-hmm. Now, ChatGPT is a pretty good lawyer, it seems like these days. Feed your contract to ChatGPT and say where are the blind spots or where are the gaps, and a lot of times you can get some really good feedback from it. Is that part of your process to use ChatGPT for analyzing contracts?
Um, no, I don't. So, I mean, we have a standard contract we use with agency owners. And then if one gets sent to me, then I do have my attorney give it a pass, especially if it feels like a heavy one.
Yeah, but like for the agency you're working with and advising them to improve their contract, how do you get them to improve that contract? Are you telling them to hire a lawyer? Are you giving them specifics to like clauses to add to the contract? How does that work?
No, I stay hands off on that. I'm not getting tangled up in anybody's contract. So I always tell them that I will make recommendations on items that they should add or ways to improve their contract, again, based on, I see tons of agency contracts. So I can think of clauses and such that needed to be added, and I may offer recommendations on how I've seen other companies or agencies write it or word it, but I always defer and say at the end of the day, they should consult with their attorney to make sure that it fits within their state, their business size, all those good things.
Yeah. One mistake I see companies make is they're overly protective and draconian in their contract, and they're the vendor. It's like, I'm not signing that. It was so one-sided. All the indemnifications and everything are for you and nothing for me. Like that's not a partnership. And then I've passed on using vendors because of that. So I'm curious your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I like to use my judgment on that one. I will say personally, I had someone, this was a few years ago, give a lot of pushback on agency authorities contract and agreement. Uh, And I had to take a moment and think back, okay, of all the people who have signed this in all the years we've used this as our standard contract, this is the one individual who feels compelled to redline it to death. That was such a red flag for me. I just said, we're not going to work together. Somebody who had that many issues, and they wanted to remove all of my protection and add in all of their protection to the point where I'm like, this isn't my contract anymore. You have just manipulated this into some version of what you want me to sign. And so I bowed out of that. But yeah, I think similar to you too, there have also been, someone sends me this long, long list of contract and it feels too much. And then I don't sign. So I think that's up to every individual, their comfort level, what feels good for them. If you need to consult with an attorney, consult with an attorney, and then only do what feels good to you.
Yeah. Has there been a time in your entrepreneurship journey that you felt like maybe I should have done something different, or ever had any kind of existential crisis or regrets?
Yeah, I'm thinking of a project I worked on. It's been a few years at this point, and it was a sticky situation, but in retrospect, I definitely could have handled it better. And what we were dealing with was I was having a lot of conversations with the business owner, and there was a particular team member who we later found out was not a good team member, and they were in a number of ways they were not a good team member, and at the risk of sounding dramatic was quite blatantly sabotaging the work that we were doing. And it was one of those things where it was so little step, right? Like little push, little move, that it wasn't until we had what now felt like a big sabotage moment that I could look back and say, oh, I see how this whole project was slowly moving off the rails because of this team member just slightly moving it a little bit, right? Just moving that steering wheel just a couple degrees until all of a sudden we were really off course. And I beat myself up about it, I got to be honest, for a few months because I thought I should know better, right? Like I have managed clients for decades at this point. I know how this works. I've dealt with good clients, bad clients, and everything in between. And I thought, Melissa, how did you miss this? How did you miss this? So, what I did is I recommend this for all business owners. We've all been there. We've all had the project that went way off course, went way over budget, way over timeline. And I always tell my business owners, okay, it's okay. Like everybody has these moments, but what we need to do is now do a retrospective and see how do we make sure this doesn't happen again? And that's what I did with my team. How do we make sure this doesn't happen again? What checkpoints do we need to put in? Is it a survey? Is it a team check-in? Is it a consult with the business owner? How do we make sure? And so starting then until now, anytime we are halfway through a project or an initial engagement, we are having a check-in call with a business owner. And I am asking them, what's team buy-in look like? How's everybody feeling? What's going on? Are we still on track? Where can we course correct? Because then I'm catching it before we're way off course. And it's worked great.
Yeah. Well, even if it did go way off course and it ended up in the engagement terminating, the client terminating, there's still an opportunity to learn and grow from it if you have a post-mortem and really dig into what were the learnings here, what could we do better, rather than just say, well, chalk it up as a loss here and move on, dust yourself up, pick yourself up and move on. Then you didn't learn what you were meant to learn from it.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I'm glad you brought up postmortems because I recommend all my business owners do that. And I recommend they do it with two projects. The ones that everybody was like, oh, I'm so glad that's over. Why did that project feel so hard? It went way over budget, all the things. And also, though, I want you to look at the projects that went off without a hitch. That felt perfect, went under budget. Everybody knew what was going on. Like it was just vibing. It felt amazing. Look at those too because you want to do that again. So yes, we want to learn from what didn't go well, but we can also learn from what did go well and say, what did we do that made this go off so well? Well, let's implement that for all of our projects.
Right. And here's another opportunity to get ChatGPT to chime in and ask for best practices and checklists and ideas for your post-mortem meetup or whatever. Now, I know we're getting close to time here. I just want to share one. Would love to get your feedback on this one. When you were talking about that saboteur and the whole scenario and how that played out, that reminded me of one particular engagement with a client, and we were brought in. It was a sizable project or engagement. It wasn't just a project; it was an engagement. We were the SEO team for this company, and then 2 weeks later, we ended up finding out that a new internal SEO guy had just been hired, which is weird. Yeah. And it turns out that he was not our friend. He was not on our side. His interests and ours were not aligned. He saw how much we were getting paid, and he was making a fraction of that, obviously. And, there was some sour grapes there. And the engagement got further and further off track. He stymied things and kind of thwarted us for quite a while until it got very uncomfortable about 8 or 9 months in. And I got to the point where I realized I had to fire the client. And I'm so glad that I went straight to the client to say that, this isn't working out. And I proactively said, we'll give you some time to wrap things up. Here's the timeline we're looking at. And he was surprised. And we had a conversation. He wanted to get on the phone right away. And the thing that happened that was surprising was he increased the size of our engagement. And then he sidelined. He didn't fire the guy. I said, please don't fire him. I'm not. I don't want to, get people losing their livelihood. But the workability isn't here, and this is why. So essentially, this guy started reporting to us, you know, dotted line report. And the turning point I found with this is funny enough, it wasn't like some sort of businessy hack or whatever. I was guided to pray for the guy, the saboteur in the company that was our thorn in our heel was actually somebody who, when you think about like the spiritual lessons of all this stuff, like business is a spiritual game. So I pray for the guy because I'm like, okay, this is not about like this isn't personal. It may feel personal, but the four agreements, don't take anything personally, is one of the four agreements, and I believe in that. And so I prayed for the guy, and pretty shortly afterwards, things unfolded in a way that we ended up getting quite a lot more scope and budget to work with, and yeah, that was pretty awesome.
Oh, that's a great story. And I think it's such a good reminder, too. Just remember that we're all people, right? Just moving around, trying to do our best. And I talk about this all the time, but just be clear, be clear. And if you are showing up with open communication and willing to be a good listener, right? So you were recognizing a problem, you're presenting this problem, there's conversations going on, there's no bad feelings for this individual, just a recognition that this is not going to work out. And I feel like, in the example you shared, everybody was really clear and it resulted in a positive outcome. So just showing up with clarity and a bit of empathy, I think always goes a long way.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So I know we're out of time, but one last wisdom nugget for our listener or viewer before we wrap up.
Yeah, I would just say, I want to encourage all of my agency owners to build as you go. I think sometimes this idea of, I've talked about getting your offers in line and productized service offerings. And do you have clear accountability for your team? And what are SOPs? I think sometimes agency owners can step back and business owners can say, oh, now I have this mountain of a project that I need to tackle and that I need to work on. And my advice is always build as you go. As you identify a need and a problem, let's sit down and address it. And that's suddenly the challenge that you're going to work on for that week, month, quarter, whatever, and then get that figured out and then move on to the next one.
Yeah, awesome. Well, Melissa, this was a pleasure, and thank you for sharing all this advice and experience with our listener. If they wanted to work with you and increase their agency, make it more efficient, more profitable, how do they find you? And also, if somebody wants to just learn from you, and maybe you have some blog or podcast of your own or something, where should we send them?
Yeah. So if you want to learn more about agency authority and the way we support business owners, you can go over to youragencyauthority.com. And then I do a lot of LinkedIn Lives where I'm doing trainings. I bring on collaborators to share information. We've got some previous client stories on there, and you can learn from other agency owners and hear about their experience. And sometimes it's helpful to hear some of the roadblocks others have moved through and what it's like to get on the other side. So even if you just want to learn more, connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm Melissa V. Morris. And like I said, there's tons of videos and stuff there too that you can lean on and learn from.
Awesome. Thank you, Melissa. And thank you, listener. Go out there and make the world a better place. We'll catch you on the next episode. I'm your host, Stephan Spencer, signing off.